And Holly, so you have been in the industry for over a decade. What has your journey been up to January when you created Sister Music?
My first ever job in music was at a music library, production music library called Boost Music. I was there for maybe a year and a half, and that's where I kind of learned about licensing. I always knew I wanted to work in music. I didn't really know anything else. I assumed if you wanted to work in music and wasn't a performer, you had to work in A&R or something. So I learned about licensing and about production music and all of that world really there. But it was out in the sticks outside of London, so I was there for a year and a bit, and then decided to move back into London, where I got a job at another music library, sort of, called Music Dealers. But they had a bit of a different model where they would represent up and coming talent just for licensing on a non-exclusive basis. So I was working with a really big catalogue of commercial music. And there we started doing a lot more kind of pitching for ads and bespoke work. And it just felt like a really good stepping stone into actually becoming a supervisor, which is what I did on the next job. After 3 years of Music Dealers, I worked with Jenna at Wake the Town. I was there for a couple of years, and that's when I sort of made the move to become a sort of independent supervisor, in the sense that I wasn't representing a specific catalogue. And from there, I worked for another music agency called Chord, which is where I was up until the end of December last year. So I guess I've been in ad supervision for about 6 years or so. I guess what happened, Sister happened, I guess the stars sort of aligned at the end of last year. I was a creative director at Chord, managing the supervision team for advertising there, and they got bought by a gaming company, and for different reasons, the stars aligned, and it felt like the right time to set up my own company, which I'd been wanting to do for a long time. So I set up Sister Music with my co-founder Hannah, who I was also working with at Chord. Hannah has had a bit less of a linear line in what she's been doing. She was doing ad supervision, then she did a huge brand partnerships project for 2 years, then she had a kid, and when she came back, kind of refocused into long form TV. So I focus very much on the advertising side of things at Sister, and Hannah runs TV and gaming and more of the long form stuff, just because that's naturally where we've been focusing. And Sister, I guess it's a female-run company. There's 4 of us, we're all women. We've got 2 composers in-house, but we work majority of our projects pitching out to external composers. And our passion is really to ensure, at every agency that I've worked with before, it's been like a 80-90% male composing roster. We've got a real passion for opening that bid up and making sure that we've got at least an even number, if not more, of women pitching on our projects. So we've been doing a really big active search for composers this year, and speaking to new people every week to build out that roster and ensure that when we do get briefs in, we know the right people for the right jobs. Because that is the main thing with advertising, especially. You'll get a job in, and I'm sure we'll delve into this much more in detail, but you'll have 24 hours, maybe a few hours to decide on the composers, and then you'll have 24, 48 hours to brief it out and to work on the demo before you have to submit to the client. Sometimes you get 3 days if you're luxurious and lucky. It's really important that we have people on the books that we know can handle specific briefs, and that's the most important thing for me in terms of as a supervisor, kind of hearing what brief people can kind of work to, what is their perfect brief, and when I get that in, knowing that they're available to pitch that out to them. That's kind of the passion behind Sister, and what we've been doing this year so far.
Fantastic, thank you. And sticking with that for a minute, because I think that's a really interesting conversation, and it can be quite a scary conversation. You know, for many of us, what's your thing? You know, as a music supervisor, what answer do you really want? Or if the answer is harder to find, how can you, as a composer, what is that conversation between a music supervisor and a composer to really find their niche or their genres which work well for you when you're choosing composers for pictures?
Yeah. I mean, it can be a really hard thing to pigeonhole yourself in that way. So, and generally, you know, we don't like to pigeonhole, and if you do feel you cover a lot of different things, that's absolutely fine. As a supervisor, I think the best thing to do is to hear things from composers. So the more music that you can send in varying different genres that you're happy composing in, that really is the best way for us to know, right, that sound is good for them. And anytime I get that sound brief in, I know I can go to them because I've heard the music created in that style before. So that's really important. Sending continuous updates on new music that you've created is a really good way of ensuring that you're continuously in a supervisor's mind for specific briefs. I think it is important to have a style and sound just in order to separate yourself, because if a composer says I can kind of do anything, then I do struggle to know which brief to send them. So even if it's just, you know, I prefer orchestral and will never do EDM or whatever, as long as you have at least a structure of different instruments that you like to work in, different, like even different kind of moods, because I've had some composers say, do you know what, I just don't know how to write happy songs. And that's absolutely fine. One composer said to me the other day, I had to Google like happy chords because I just didn't know how to get there. And that's fine, because I know that whenever I get something dark in, then he's the guy for that job. So it's absolutely fine to not do everything. It's much more important to stay true to yourself and to make it clear to a supervisor what briefs really are your bag and work for you, because then we know what to send you. That's much better that way round than saying you can do everything and then taking on a brief that isn't you and sending something that you're not pleased with, because that's not a good reciprocal relationship. I would much rather a composer said, this isn't for me, I'm not going to pitch on this one, like come back to me when you've got, you know, a different brief on, because that will be better all round for everyone, I think.
So if, for example, when you first have the conversation and maybe they don't have any sort of orchestral recordings, they're like, I really love orchestra, I'm a violin player, I'm really good at this, but maybe you don't necessarily have you can't visually see that or audibly, hear that. Yeah. But then if they do a project that isn't necessarily, clear for you to use, but it's still an example, they can just sort of send that over and go, hi, Hollie, just let you know, I just finished this. I'm really pleased with it. This is
exactly.
That's really useful for you as a supervisor.
100%. And, I would just say, if there's an area you want to get into, write a couple of tracks, even if they're 30 seconds in that style, and send it to the supervisors. It doesn't have to be, especially for advertising, it can be really short. But so long as there's an arc and you're showing what it is that you're trying to achieve through that sound, or demonstrating a use of a specific instrument, then we'll be able to hear through that and hear what it is that you're trying to do. It really is the best way to showcase the different kind of sounds that you would be useful, like good for. Same with library music. I mean, library music is a great way to like cut your teeth and start writing in different styles. And that's absolutely fine to send to people, say, this is signed to a library, but I've just written this track that's different to what I told you that I could do. And so I just thought I would send it over so that you know that I can write in that sound. So I do get a lot of composers saying, all of my work is orchestral, but I do really like funk, and then you think, okay, great, amazing. send me something that demonstrates the kind of style and sound that you do. And I would say composers that keep in my inbox, not too regularly, but every couple of months with updates of new music or new work that they've done, or it's a really good way of showcasing what you can do.